Welcome to Balanced Life with Debbie Carlin Boyle. Conversations connecting to a healthier you. The show that gives you all the latest and greatest health and wellness information to inspire you to live a life of balance and joy. Debbie Carlin Boyle is a health and nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor who helps her clients live in balance with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. Please welcome your host, Debbie Carlin Boyle.
Everybody, I want to welcome you to my show today here in Southern California. It's a beautiful summer day, even though we're not officially in summer yet. It's really warm here. So I welcome you. This is my show, Balanced Life by me, Debbie Carlin Boyle. I create conversations that connect to a healthier you. Again, today, great guest, great conversation to connect to your health and everything that's going on right now. We want to do that. We want to be the best we can be. So I'm going to tell you a few things you can do because I'm an interactive show. So if you want to call in, the number here is 323-524-2599. At any point, call in, ask a question, make a comment. I love to hear from you. So interactive is what we're all about. You can also go to my Facebook page, which is Fit by Design, and it will say Balanced Life, and you're going to see the show streaming live there as well. If you're not already watching on there, make a comment, ask a question. I check everything after the show, and myself or my guest will get back to you. So there you have it. So a couple of things I want to tell you about. One is a webinar that I'm going to be co-hosting with my guest who was my guest 2 weeks ago. Her name is Dina Goodman, and she is a physical therapist that specializes in pelvic health, if you didn't hear the show. And we are doing a webinar on being well during this time, because it's really important that we take care of ourselves and that we have balance during this time. So we are going to talk about all the pillars of health and how to bring those together. We're going to have registration on our website. So I implore you to join us. It's 100% free, and you're going to get great information. And again, I love to be interactive. So this webinar will be interactive. And finally, I want you to know that during this time, because we're still, even though each state is going through phases of reopening right now, we're still, with everything that's been going on in the world in the last several months and several weeks, we are still out of alignment, I believe, within our own personal bodies. And I'm here to help you, and I'm offering free services. So if you go to my website, Balanced Life by Debbie, that's spelled D-E-B-I, and you just go to the contact page. There's actually a way to contact me the second you pop on. I will get back to you, and I am doing free health coaching sessions. This is where we sit down one-on-one and we talk about what's going on, and we try to bring what's all the inconsistencies back to a decent level again. So I invite you to do that. I'm talking about sessions, not one session. So go ahead, that's all free too. So having gotten there, let's get to our show today, because I'm really excited about my guest. So if you talk about movement, we're going to talk about that today and why it's so important. Because every few months, I love doing shows with experts in the field of movement and body conditioning. So the definition of movement is the act or process of moving, especially if you change of a place or a position or a posture. So my guest today, Jason Zenga, is a coach and trainer who is a master of breaking down complex movement into simpler parts with working with people. With over 10 years of experience, Jason's coaching career began in college with strength and conditioning internship and working with the UMass basketball team. Jason has a degree in kinesiology and a minor in philosophy from the University of Massachusetts. Jason's mission statement is, never let your body out-train your mind, believing that you have to understand movement in order to compete at your best. His curious nature has grown into a passion for learning that he combines with his past athletic and coaching experiences to teach his athletes and his clients movement. Will you please welcome today my guest to the show, Jason Zenga. You're getting applause from me and from others out there in the universe. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You staying safe during this crazy time?
Yeah, it's been interesting here in LA, especially, but we're safe here. We're good.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit before the show about how your business is still going on, how we've all had to pivot. Obviously, right. My show right here is pivoting by doing Zoom, and right. That you have kept yourself very busy through ways to sort of reinvent how to get to your clients in your classes.
Yeah, I think I've actually I've enjoyed quarantine a little bit. I've enjoyed it because it's made me adapt a little bit. So I was already doing Zoom sessions or FaceTime sessions really with some clients. As I told you, I have some clients that are scattered around the world, but the quarantine forced us to put our classes online. So now we have, weekly classes online for the different corporations I work with, and then for just the gym that I work with. And that was something I always wanted to get to, but just didn't really get around to. So it's been fun. It's been a cool challenge.
Good. Well, we're going to go start from the beginning, if that's okay from you. I want to hear a little bit about you, where you're from, and what your upbringing and education was like that brought you to LA to do what you're doing today. So
so I'm from Massachusetts. I grew up outside of Boston. Went to college at UMass, and the original plan was to be an engineer. But I went to my first lecture, I think it was like a 9 a.m. lecture on a Monday or something like that. And by 10 a.m. I was no longer an engineer. So I decided.
You just knew it wasn't for you. Isn't that funny?
I'll always remember she was talking about making canoes out of concrete, and I was just like, concrete doesn't float. I'm not interested in this. So
yeah.
Anyways, I ended up living with a bunch of engineers in my junior and senior year, but I was undeclared, and then I found kinesiology by accident, and it was interesting to me. I always liked being in the gym. Basketball was my major sport when I was a kid, and that was kind of how I identified myself through high school. And when I was no longer competing in college, it was maybe just kind of like a void for a little bit. And then kinesiology was cool because it filled that for a while, and it was able to help me understand what to do in the weight room, because I always grew up the skinny kid, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So,
the tall skinny kid. You look, how tall are you? You look very tall.
I'm 6'2", and I've been 6'2" probably since I was like 12 or 13.
Oh, so. Yeah. So in order to not get made fun of and called string bean and all kinds of wonderful things the way kids will do. So when you were working out, when you were playing basketball and you were working out and doing your other athletic sports, you really, I assumed you worked with a coach. Were you interested then in movement and how muscle worked and body kinetics worked, or did you not really think about that then?
Yeah, really only to the degree that it would help me play basketball. My major goal when I was a kid was to be able to dunk. And I think my flaw was that once I accomplished that, I stopped trying to accomplish other things. And I was like, oh, I can dunk. Cool. I'm happy with that.
And you thought that did you have aspirations to play professionally?
I thought I was the world's greatest basketball player.
Well, that's good. It's a good mindset.
Plus, I was tall when I was young, so I thought I was going to be much taller. But I was slow. I couldn't move side to side very fast. I injured my ankles a lot. So, and so that kind of just, I competed at a high level in high school, but by the time college came around, I didn't want to play anymore. I had a couple opportunities to play in college, but it just didn't interest me. So I gave that up and started studying, I guess.
Yeah. And then but then getting into kinesiology is really getting down to the nuts and bolts of body mechanics. So that you must have had a real passion to understand the way the body works in connection with being able to live and have high performance activity in your life.
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? So I didn't I didn't know it was there. And the majority of my family are mechanics and engineers, and my father's an engineer. So that's why I was going into engineering.
Mm.
So I never understood that world. And I used to work for my dad, and he used to try to help me fix my car. He tried to help me fix my car radio one time, and that didn't go so well. He did it by himself, basically.
Yeah.
So when I found kinesiology, it was just something that was easier for me to understand
Mm.
in that sense. So for me, it was more, we studied biomechanics, or I studied biomechanics a lot. And, it's kind of funny now because 10 years later, we're finding out that biomechanics doesn't really apply to the human body. But it was a cool experience because some of the teachers that I had, and then some of the friends that I met in kinesiology, kind of led me to where I'm at today.
Right. You have such an interesting take. So why did you decide, once you got your degree and you were sort of working, did you get certified to become a personal trainer right away once you got your degree, or was that back in
I did.
Boston, or?
So I moved to LA pretty quick. So right after I graduated college, I moved to LA like 3 months later. Just drove across the country. My ex-girlfriend was out here at the time. Her first job was out here. So that's mostly what landed me out here.
Yeah. I hear that story a lot. People make a move for a significant relationship that they have at the time, and that somehow dissipates, but they stay. So
yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was great. I'm really lucky that her first job was out here, because this place was meant for me, I think. I enjoyed it out here. When I first got out here, I think the first year I was here, I had like 11 jobs or something like that. Like as soon as I realized that I didn't like the job, I would just quit. And I would find
in the industry, in the health and wellness industry, or did you work like as a waiter or something?
No, I worked at I think I worked at like 4 or 5 different gyms before I found a job in a gym that I was willing to do. And it was weird. It was a front desk position, was my first position, but the atmosphere and the culture of the gym was cool. So I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, but the entry levels are the way you work your way into something anyway,
And the cool part was, I didn't really know anything about boxing, but this guy started a boxing program in the parking lot behind the gym, and he needed some help, and that spurred everything. So that started everything. His name's Leon, and that's how I got into boxing. So I wasn't traditionally trained or classically trained as a boxing coach. I had to learn that on the fly and kind of make it up. It was cool.
Yeah, I love boxing. I can really relate to the passion for that. I was a cardio kickboxer, which is a different sort of the Billy Blank old school stuff, but I got addicted to it. And there wasn't really a certification program, but one of the teachers that I worked with was trained by Billy himself. He trained me, so then I became a teacher.
Cool.
And I loved it. I mean, this is where you come into someone like you I would need, but I loved it to the point where, kind of destroyed my knees. And
sure.
I wish I knew the right way to do it back then, instead of the, hard, fast, and furious way that I was doing it. But I just love the movements. I love them. I was so addicted. I had to do it 3 days a week.
It's interesting you say that, though. So I kind of catch my clients, I call them out all the time about saying like right versus wrong in terms of movement, right? So I don't think there is a right way necessarily. Obviously, there's a structure and a format that you want to be able to follow. But in terms of movement, everybody's going to move a little different, and every movement itself is going to happen differently each time. So
well, let's talk about that, because, I believe in individuality, bioindividuality. We're all, biologically, we're all different human beings, the way we are sort of put together. But universally, there are very, of course, there are commonalities. So when it comes to movement, how do you know? I mean, you talk about what you call functional range conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And what is that what we're talking about now? Is that what applies
to that's group that's the group, or the name of the group that I study with, or I've studied from. So that's an actual certification that I had to go and earn in person. And
what does it mean, and how does it work?
So functional range conditioning is like I guess the way you would define it is that it's like a body control system in terms of it's the very specific aspect of trying to define what your joint is supposed to do, right? So if you take a
Okay.
shoulder and just look at a shoulder objectively, not an individual shoulder, but just a shoulder, we have to define, well, what does a shoulder have to be capable of to be able to be called a shoulder, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so Dr. Spina, the man who created all of this, came up with what he would define each joint's function and range of motion to be classified a healthy joint. And if you don't meet those criteria, then your joint's more or less considered, I guess, not healthy or not up to par. However, whatever way you want to word it.
And is
But
there a
then,
range of exercises that you do to
exactly,
see what,
yeah.
whether it's
So
functioning
that's
properly?
more or less what I had to study and what I had to learn, and what
Mm-hmm.
I've been experiencing and putting myself through for the past 2 years. And that was because of the injury that I told you about before, when I injured my shoulder doing jujitsu. So
That's
it
what
kind
kind
of
of
all
got you
came,
into this whole
yeah, it all
situation,
came full
right?
circle. Yeah.
So that's what got you to get this certification, so you could understand it for yourself,
Yeah, it was a
correct?
recommendation from some colleagues. So I don't carry health insurance, and I wasn't going to go see a doctor for my shoulder because it wasn't a bad enough injury that it was really preventing me from doing anything significant. Or at least I could still do my job. Like, there were things I couldn't do. So a couple of my friends kind of gave me some pointers, and they said, go study with this group. And when I went, and I actually went for the certification, it just made a lot of sense to me. It kind of took
Mm-hmm.
my kinesiology degree and all my past experience, because I had been a trainer for about 7 years at the time, maybe 8 years. And it just kind of made everything click, and it made everything fit
Mm-hmm.
together for me. So I used their just kind of thought process and started to apply it to myself and then to my clients. And we've seen a lot of success. It's been a really cool, the past 2 years, I've seen more success with my clients than I ever had before.
Wow. It's a fairly new certification for you in the last
For
couple of
me, yeah,
years.
for me,
Yeah.
I think it's been around since 2012 or maybe even earlier than that. I'm not sure.
Right. I think that's great. And that's why I sought you out, because you're not just quote unquote a personal trainer. I mean, you really get down to the nitty gritty of muscles, of joints, of movement. I see we've been friends on Instagram for a while now. And so I see your posts, and your posts, the way you work, that is so conventional. It's not the like basic meat and potatoes of personal training, where, for me, I sort of have a formula, though I individualize based on the client's age, needs, wants, injuries, those kind of things. But you actually get down, if they do have a shoulder injury or any kind of pain, you've got the sort, and there, it's beyond PT exercises. It's beyond doing physical therapy. You're really getting to the source of where the
Yeah.
injury is.
I would just say
And that's rare.
Yeah, we're just simplifying things. We're making things really, really simple. So I do a lot of work based off of goal setting, right? So I have my clients, and I don't do aesthetic goals. I don't care for those. I think they're like a negative.
They're movement goals, goal
Yeah,
setting for movement. How does
yeah.
that work? So what do you mean when you say that?
Like, can you do a pull-up, or do you want to be able to do a pull-up, or can you do a push-up? Can you squat 2 times your body weight? Can you do a muscle up? Things like that. So
and what does that tell you? So they set a goal that they want to be able, because I think, again, getting back to the meat and potatoes, like push-ups and pull-ups, 2 things, and squats, 3 things that I think are the most important thing that our body should be able to do as we age.
Sure.
And they're some of the most difficult. I have trouble doing a pull-up. Now, granted, I'm in my 60s, so it isn't as easy now as it was.
Right.
But I still have trouble. I have to use like an assist machine, to help do my pull-ups.
So then, obviously this is the first time we met, and we're not necessarily in person, so it would be a little bit harder, but there's different ways you could assess an individual to say, okay, is it just the fact that you lack the strength to do the pull-up, which often the case it's not. More often the case it's, getting your arms overhead in the certain position that will allow you to be strongest for the pull-up is what's preventing you from doing it. So if we can
Whoa.
address the shoulder issue and we can say, all right, let's make the shoulder healthier, let's free up more range of motion overhead, and then let's teach the body how to be strong in that position, then it becomes a more realistic goal. And that's what I mean by we're making things simpler. So some of the drills that we'll do may not necessarily look like a pull-up or anything related to it, but it's a micro fraction piece of the pull-up that we're going to need to access later on. And so,
and that is so wonderful because that's so rare. So if somebody has a goal of being able to do a pull-up, you really break it down. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, it's
that's cool.
But I mean, at the Gym 34 North that I work at, we've got a number of coaches who kind of practice this stuff, and we get a lot of girls to do pull-ups, and it's kind of cool to watch because it's something that's not necessarily common in a gym. You don't see a bunch of girls just ripping pull-ups, so it's kind of cool.
And for women, especially, I mean, for anybody, well, number one, yeah, you're right. Women don't go in for the pull-ups. They want toned arms, toned legs, cute butts, you know, flat abs. Those are sort of goal-setting things for women in general.
You can get those with pull-ups,
but yeah, exactly. But you don't think it. You think pull-ups, macho, don't need it.
Sure.
It is one of the most difficult sort of range of motion for women. And I have to admit, for myself and for my clients, I'm not certified in how to break it down and understand what needs, you know, positioning and what needs to be cleared before we can make it easier.
Yeah, sure. So that's where you'd utilize like a network, right? So we talk about networking in my friend group a lot. Like there's a lot of things that I have no idea how to train. And I don't want to know how to train. So I don't waste my time doing it. So I'll send, you know, X client to whomever knows how to do that best, and I'll refer them out. Similar to, like, you know, if I had a client that had an injury that I didn't know how to deal with or needed intervention from a doctor, I'm not just gonna jump in.
Right.
I'm gonna send
somebody. Yeah, especially that's.
Yeah, within fitness, it's cool. Everybody has their place. Everybody has their thing that they can do and can serve a need for, you know, whatever the client's looking for, really.
Yeah. I love that a client comes to you though with goal setting, because the other thing I was going to say about women is bone loss is so prevalent, especially post menopause, you know, and it's something I work with my women clients that are over 45, 50, who are really concerned about that. And I just know if they could do a pull-up, they're warding off so much in the future that could potentially be harmful to them.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I have a lot of clients that are in that kind of age range as well, and they're some of the most fun people to work with, because once you expand their vision of what's possible, then it becomes really fun, because there's a lot of hurdles that you have to meet first, right? Especially with somebody who's maybe had a lot of negative experiences in the past. Maybe they've had shoulder injuries, maybe they've had back pain and all these things. And so they're going to look at a pull-up and be like, not for me, my body doesn't do that. And if they don't want to, sure, we won't do pull-ups, that's fine.
Right.
But if they do want to, there's ways that we can get to it. And once you open that up, it's just fun. It's cool. It's a lot of
yeah, that's so cool that, yeah, I mean, you're really bringing a gift to your clients. So in this climate, I'm just curious. So without having the weights, the equipment that you need to, let's say, you know, not everybody has capacity to do a pull-up in their home. Sure. How have you pivoted your training, group and individually right now?
Yeah, so my group training is all body weight regardless. So I don't use any, I mean, we'll use maybe a little equipment, but it's like a tennis ball or a towel or something that slides on the carpet, something like that. So
like a paper plate.
Yeah.
I do that with my clients.
And my idea, and it's not my original idea, this is from somebody else, but my idea is if you can't control your body first, then there's no need for equipment. Like, the equipment helps, sure, that's great, but if you can't control your own limbs in space, controlling the weight is not going to go that great, probably. right?
Exactly.
So,
That, and you've been, I mean, that's really what you've been saying all
right.
along is,
Yeah, so for this time during all the quarantine, the really cool part is it takes the weights away from people by force, right? So they don't have access to it if they don't have it at their home. So you have two choices. You either do nothing, which is the worst thing for you, or you can figure out how to move your body and improve upon that so that when you do have the opportunity to go back to the weights, you'll do it better, right?
yeah, exactly.
Try to make it as simple as possible, because the more we complicate things, the less likely we are to do them, right?
Exactly. I
So
agree.
simplify it and just make things really, really easy, and just kind of prepare. And that's the idea behind the prerequisites. Like, most gyms operate behind the prerequisite of putting somebody through a workout is that they just walk through the door, right?
Yeah,
Uh, but
exactly. And a one size kind of fits all,
yeah,
do this regimen and it will work. And that's
yeah,
not the
so it's,
case.
this is an opportunity that people can kind of take to learn how their body works and understand that a little bit better, so that when they do take up whatever activity it is that they can go back to, um, maybe they're better, or maybe they didn't lose a step, or maybe that injury that was bothering them before doesn't bother them anymore, whatever, however you want to put it.
Right. That's great. That's so great. That's a real gift, again, that you are bringing to your clients.
Right.
So, and we'll come back around again, because I want to talk about now that gyms here in California, or in LA, I should say specific, gyms are going to be allowed to open it again at the end of the week with obviously CDC strict guidelines. So
Right.
we're going to talk about what that looks like, because I know, because I work at 3 gyms, that things are going into place, and as members are really skeptical about coming back and what it's going to look like, feel like, and act like, and so there's a whole culture around skepticism right now about that. So I want to get to it, but let's just talk more a little bit in general about your process of training, because you talk a lot about the importance of posture, which we
Sure.
all know is important and we all kind of let go of,
Right.
and again, for women as we age, not for anybody as they age, but for women, our posture, like for me, I'm a spin bike instructor and I have been for 25 years. So, and now we're all hunching over our computers, right? And our cell phones, because everything that we're doing is through the internet or electronics. So let's talk a little bit about posture and the importance of, and why.
So I have a lot of ideas about this, but the way that it relates within the functional range conditioning community, and the most eye-opening idea that I was introduced to was that posture is not a static one position, like chest up, shoulders back type of thing. Posture is dynamic, and the idea is that you need to be able to move in and out of different postures depending on what the position demands, right? So, when we're seated, the position calls for shoulders forward, rounded a little bit. You don't necessarily have to sit up straight. Nobody expects you to sit up straight all the time.
People go
Right?
by and stick
Yeah.
it, I have scoliosis, very slightly, but and from teaching all those years, so anybody who walks by me will see me doing like a slouch. My
Sure.
kids, especially,
I
my
think,
kids have turned into my mother, and they do the poke thing.
So what I think is more important, that people set aside time each day to move their spine in and out of flexion extension, right? So when we're seated, we're in flexion. Your spine's technically flexed, folded at the tailbone, folded at the rib cage forward. So that's flexion. If you think cat camel to like yoga, right? I think this would be like cat position or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So then extension would be the opposite, right? Opening up and going
Opening
out.
the chest and squeezing the shoulder blades.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily about living your life in this position. It's just, set aside time each day to move in and out of that position, doing it well, practicing it.
Makes sense.
Improve upon it. And then when you're going about your day to day, then you don't have to think about it as much.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
A whole lot of sense. And I've noticed, quite frankly, I mean, this is the only thing on the positive side of not teaching these last several months, because there's not a lot of ways I can be doing that. My posture has gotten better.
That's cool.
Personally.
Yeah, I mean, the spin boat's tough. I've been to I've only been to 2 spin classes, and they were fun, and I thought the atmosphere was cool, but it's not for me. And when they were doing the weights on the bike, and
yeah, I don't do that, but I do because of being a personal trainer as well. After my class, we get off the bike, and those that want to stay, which sometimes can be half a class or only a third, we put mats out and we do abs. So we do core work afterwards, but we're not on the bike. It's one thing. This is high intensity interval training on the bike, and then abs come right after it. And I've had a lot of success with doing that over the past like 7 years or so.
Yeah, the cool thing about fitness and movement is that whatever you do will work. It's just, do your expectations for what you're going to get from that align with what's actually going to happen. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. So, well, there's a lot of, it's interesting you say that, because I think there's a lot of parts to what you're going to get from that.
Sure.
Because there's the physical, and we're going to talk about this body-mind connection now, I think, because there's the mental. So, we know how come movement is so important, not only for our bodies and our longevity, but also for our mind, for our success, to have clear visions and thinking, and to create opportunity with enthusiasm. That comes with sort of flushing everything out, right? And
sure.
And so I feel like, like endorphins, people who do like the high intensity interval classes, like the spin classes that give you the high, and the first 10 minutes you can or a runner, because I know that you've ran before. So, that when they say, oh, I love when the endorphin kicks in, that first 20 minutes is tough, and then I'm off and running, literally. That's true for most high intensity exercises. That's my drug of choice, actually. Sure. People are addicted to that. So it's not just how you look, but how you feel.
100%.
So, tell me your thoughts on this mind-body connection and how important it is.
Yeah, so I think it's something that we've kind of missed out on, right? So for the longest time, the education system was telling us that our mind and our body weren't connected, right? And I think the message for the longest time in science was that your mind more or less solidifies by the time you're like 20, right? And then it can change. And so if you accept that point of view, even though it's false, then it kind of puts you in a box and it makes you stuck, right?
Right.
But what's cool about movement and what's special about it is that the more you move, the more your brain activity increases. And so more parts of your brain start communicating with each other. And the brain is actually a plastic organ, meaning like it can change on a daily basis depending on the informational inputs that it receives, which is somewhat the reason why the FRC community and all that stuff works. Because if you practice your joint motion every single day and you're constantly putting that input in, your brain remembers it, right?
Right.
So the idea with movement being like, the more you move, especially in a specific manner, the healthier your brain's ability to be plastic remains throughout your life, right? The more sedentary you become, or the more routine your life becomes, the less ability your brain has to change, meaning it's going to start to decay faster, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love, I think it's really important. And of course, I know you probably talk about this all the time with your clients, but I think it's really important that they understand that muscle has memory too. And that's the mind-body connection. So we're training muscles. It's like, a gymnast or any athlete. That's why we practice. That's why we're coached. That's why we do a dancer. My kids are dancers. My oldest daughter has a degree in dance. My youngest a minor in dance. They've been dancing their whole lives to learn. Those are muscle memory things, not just for, I think a dancer is an athlete, but it's so pivotal. It's so important to the overall outcome and process of what you're doing, and you can create that, but you have to do it to create it, you know, just like most things in life. Our physical bodies have that reasoning behind it as well. It's important.
I think the tough thing for us as we age or as we become or trainers dealing with adults is it's hard to be a beginner again, and it's hard to humble yourself to get back into that, like, all right, I have to learn something from the very beginning stages, maybe even unlearn what I thought I knew before and go back into it with a fresh mind. So you're, you know, having to deal with that and teach them something new at the same time. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a whole mindset, especially because, you know, I am the over 50 crowd and over 60 crowd, you know, and it just, there's, oh, it's too late. It's,
no.
You know, that's something, you know, that you do
all the time.
Yeah. It's never too late.
What was it? 2 years ago, I signed my mom up for a trainer. I like took her to a gym, brought her with me. I was like, Ma, this is your guy. This is Pat. And now she's been, I think, going twice a week for 2 years. It's really cool.
Which is great. And how does she feel?
So much better. But she has scoliosis as well. She sits a lot, you know, sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
But so now, you know, she used to complain about back pain and things like that. And I think that for the most part that's been able to either work itself out, or she at least knows what to do when she's feeling the back pain. So
yeah. And then she has you when you visit, or when she visits, and you can give her very specific exercises to do to train the body, like we were saying. You do a class called Kin Stretch. What's that?
So Kin Stretch is just the group format of functional range conditioning, right? So functional range conditioning is the very specific to that individual that's right in front of me in the moment. And then Kin Stretch is the group application of that. So,
okay.
You know, within a group class, like we said earlier, everybody's different, right? So I can't necessarily take my time on an individual basis to treat each person the way I would on a one-on-one, just because it would just make the class painfully slow. So Kin Stretch is just the group format. How do we take our ideas and apply them to a group in a safe manner, make sure that what we're communicating is well understood. And that's what Kin Stretch is.
Okay. I get that. Because you sent me some pictures of you doing those kinds of classes, and they look real. I want to join them.
They support all the other things that we do in the gym. So that's kind of, you know, 34 North has a really cool culture that's based on training for skills, kind of like what we were talking about before. And that class, it serves as like a support for that. So we get to break down.
It looks like we have a call. Hang on one sec. Do we have a call, Kurt?
No, we do not.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought we did. Sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go back and what you were saying.
Yeah. So all I was saying is that, you know, the class that I run, or the class that we've curated there at the gym, using the Kin Stretch principles, serves as like a support system for our members. So, you know, after Monday when they do heavy pull-ups, or, you know, upper body day, and then Tuesday they're doing heavy deadlifts or squats, whatever it is, you know, Wednesday they'll come in and we'll go through that type of class. So it allows them to keep training, but it serves as like a recovery. That's cool.
That's so smart. You're right. They're supporting what you do, so it kind of goes in a full circle. Yeah. So how have you been able to do those classes since?
So I'm still running those every Sunday at 10 a.m. on Zoom. And I actually go down to the gym and I film it in the gym, and I drag one of my students along so I can demo on the person, because it's really hard to teach and cue at the same time. And then I also run a class on Fridays, but that's private for Snapchat. So I've been doing that for a couple months now.
Wow.
It's working out well. It's
so you've adapted to this quarantine quite nicely, actually.
Yeah, it's been fun. Like, that's, I guess, kind of why I said before I prefer it. It keeps me, you know, I'm not spending any money. I'm in the house.
And you're not driving. That's what I like. I have to, you know, most of my clients are out in Malibu and I live in Venice. And for those that don't know, that's about a 45-minute drive in traffic, especially. So
you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. I mean, even as things have been opening back up, It's, it's still a bit of a drive because of the distance, but it's nice that we don't have the traffic here in LA like we normally do. But that, I think, in every big city all across the country is coming back. Maybe not some companies, like my daughter's company, they're looking at not going back into the actual office until September.
Sure, I've heard that.
And with the state colleges out here are not going back until this fall, until the spring. So that's going to take a certain element off our streets.
Yeah.
Because it's, it would be it's slightly counterproductive for me to be so frustrated with traffic when I get to a client or a class.
Yeah.
And, because I should be doing the opposite. I should be motivating, not, God damn that traffic attitude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I try to make my life as simple as possible and keep everything close by to prevent that, because, I'm from Boston, so I'm susceptible to that road rage a little bit.
Yeah. I don't hear that Boston accent though.
My mom was real adamant about making sure that we could do both. It comes out, sometimes, especially if I'm talking to my father. But
yeah, when you hear the accent.
My mom she was, you don't need to sound like that,
I would have totally pinned you for a California kid when I first heard your voice. And then when you said Boston, I'm like, I don't hear that. So I've been to UMass. I've been on the campus. Yeah. It's a great campus. It's a great area.
That was a great experience, but I haven't been back, but it was a good 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think college is a really transitional and important time in a person's life, and hopefully our colleges will get back to some sense of normalcy, which is everything in life, hopefully will happen soon. Let's talk about that, getting back to it from a gym standpoint, which is what you and I are experts at. What are your thoughts about how to maneuver into a gym setting of any kind, whether it's for classes or for personal training? 29 North. What is your thoughts about how that's going to look?
I'm not 100% sure what we're going to do at 34, but
34.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant, and I try to have empathy towards how other people feel, because personally, I'm not afraid of the virus. Like, I understand it's a real thing, and that people are getting sick and people are dying and whatnot, but I focus all of my energy and attention on trying to be healthy for situations like this, so that I'm not living in fear. I understand that there's probably still some sort of chance that I could get it, right? But yeah, I haven't really given it much thought, right? So now as we return, it'll be interesting to see how the clients and the customers feel. And I think that's going to dictate mostly how it goes, right? So we're going to have protocols in place to clean the equipment a little more stringently than we were before. And, that will be up to our leaders in the gyms and whoever's managing or owns those specific locations. I think it's going to be much harder for the big box gyms. I think
and I work at one of those. So I am currently on furlough from one.
Sure.
And they have set out guidelines for when they do reopen. I don't believe they've officially have a reopening date, but the guidelines are for employees and for members. I think they're two kind of separate things, but the employees are pretty stringent, and it's temperature taking, it's 8 feet apart, separating all the equipment.
I think what people will find is with all of that is that like I myself, if I was a customer, would not want to deal with that.
Well, and that's what the biggest problem in talking. I do have a community like you do, I'm sure, of people who take my classes over the last, 25 years I've been teaching. And some of them are my best friends, and I socialize with them, and they tell me their thoughts. And a lot of it is, if that's the way it's going to be, I'm not going back. Now, knowing that it isn't permanent, but it is, there's CDC guidelines. These are things they have to follow, or they could, be shut down, especially if people start getting sick.
Right.
So for us as trainers, we may feel one way. The companies that you go back to, especially the big box gyms, I work both. I work small mom and pop gyms and big box. And it is. I think it's very off-putting. I mean, let's face it, it's off-putting to go to the market right
A
now.
little bit. I'm
You
not a
know,
huge fan of the masks, and like it's a little strange now that we're getting out of our car and putting masks on to go to the store. I understand why it's required, but like normally you'd be like looking at somebody with a mask going into a store and be like, that doesn't belong. And
no. And
now you're
now
the weird one who
it's,
doesn't have
you
to.
can't get in one without one on.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, I know there's a level of stress. My stress, my cortisol levels. I know. So I try to go buy as much as I need at once, even though I buy mostly fresh. I don't buy packaged food, so things don't last that long.
Yeah.
But I try to be as efficient as I can, whereas I used to go to 3 different markets to get all my favorite things in one day. I won't do that anymore. That in itself, there's a little piece of you that's going, okay, I got to be really strategic about this. And I think sometimes, now that we're over it, it's our new way of having to deal with, I'm not going to say normal because I don't think it's normal. And I'm hoping it's not going to last for months and months and months. But it adds to a level of stress. And when I think a gym is supposed to do just the opposite of that, right? We go to the gym, we run it out, we sweat it out, we work it out. I've always noticed over the years when somebody walks into a gym to go to work out, they're always, their head's kind of down, they're feeling a little frumpy, maybe a little hungover, whatever. As soon as an hour passes, whether they're working out with equipment or taking a class, they're standing up taller, they got that slow sweat thing going on. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, of course.
So part of that's going to be taken away from them. That part that they go for in the first place, I think you're absolutely right. And I worry about that in this industry, how we're going to, be able to convince people to come back, because it is better for them in the long run, no matter if it's the same or not.
Yeah, I think it will be an interesting time. I mean, the push for all the at-home stuff had started long before this, regardless, right? So, you have those mirrors coming out where, you can watch somebody in your mirror work out, or you have the Peloton bikes and things like that. So I think we were all going to be in a position where we had to adapt regardless, right?
Yeah.
So the quarantine just sped that up. The industry changes quickly, to what the customers want, right? So, 10, maybe 20 years ago in the early 2000s when I was in college, it was all about the big box gyms. And now it's mostly about smaller kind of boutique type of gyms. Hopefully, we'll see how many of them were able to survive being shut down for so long, reopening and what that type, I don't own a business, so I don't know what the loan and all that stuff. So
it's the unknown. It remains to be seen, which is why the big box gyms furloughed all of us instructors. We're all furloughed right now at this gym that I work at.
It's really, I guess my answer is that I don't have one, because it will take time to see what the customers do. I think what you'll see is more personal training. So if gyms put themselves in a position to be just maybe a strictly personal training gym, and they're either renting out space or getting creative, finding new ways to create revenue by just having more one-on-one as opposed to group stuff happening, that might be able to succeed more if you have the space. It would really kind of depend on the situation, I guess, for each gym. But I think those companies that rely on big classes, I think that's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, that's why we're furloughed, because they don't know what it's going to look like. Well, they're trying to do them outside as a whole thing. So we're running low on time. I want to talk really, really briefly about breath, the importance of breath and working out. And then we're going to get some final words from you and wrap it all up. So we're there. So.
So breathing is one of those things that when you start to learn to be a trainer, or even when I was in kinesiology, like they didn't talk about it at all. And it doesn't really make sense to not address it, because it's something that we do all the time on a regular basis, no matter what, right? It's subconscious most of the time. So in the fitness industry, it's really interesting. We talk about food and nutrition. We talk about water and hydration, but we rarely talk about oxygen consumption, right? It's just not discussed. And this was brought to my attention when I picked up a book called The Oxygen Advantage 3 years ago. Actually, it was to mostly stop snoring, weirdly enough, but and it worked. But
yeah, good. But it also gave you a lesson to teach other people, to help other people, I'm sure. Yeah.
What it kind of taught, to simplify it basically, is that your nose is for breathing and your mouth is for eating. And just because your mouth can do both doesn't mean that you should breathe through your mouth. The reason being, a couple reasons, but you lose a lot more water when you breathe in and out through your mouth, just from a hydration standpoint. And that's usually the way that I pitch it to my clients. It's the easiest way to get them to agree to try to change or at least pay attention to their breathing. And then you restrict oxygen flow in when you breathe through your nose, which most people would think would be a bad thing, but it's actually better for you. It allows the relationship between the gases, oxygen and CO2, carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale, to stay closer so that the actual exchange of oxygen off the red blood cell occurs at the muscle. And if you're an athlete, like the easiest way to understand this, right, is in competition, your lungs give up way faster than your actual muscles do, right? We all kind of fatigue there first. So if you can address your breathing at rest, then you have a better chance of improving it when you're exercising, competing, whatever. And there's so many other benefits that you could take that, but the one, you know, if somebody buys into it past the hydration standpoint, the one that I'll usually lead them to is the mental aspect, right? So we talked a lot about that today. And your only access to control your nervous system is through breathing, right? So your breathing rate and maybe volume will dictate whether you're in a sympathetic nervous system state or parasympathetic nervous system state. So sympathetic being your fight or flight kind of adrenaline, and your parasympathetic being rest or digest, right? So when you start to understand that you can control those two states by how you breathe, then your ability to understand what sensations your body's giving back to you becomes greater.
Yeah,
and
that's,
it becomes an easy way to find progress.
Breath is life. There's a whole yoga practice called the art of living. It's really, and they're talking, it's all about breath, and breath is life. It's really the art of breathing. And without it, we're not alive. Think about it. We need our breath. So we might as well use it to our advantage and understand how to use it like you're talking about. We are completely out of time. So I have all my guests leave me with a final thought, a phrase, a word, inspiration, whatever it is you want to leave us with.
I guess the thing that I've been focused on the most lately, and it was the most powerful thing I've heard recently, is everything happens twice. You have to see it in your mind before it can become reality. And if that is the case, then your thoughts are the most important thing to take care of, because even the negative will come true if you're not aware of it. So think positively.
Good one. Thank you. Really, you are an expert in your field, and I am so glad I sought you out. And I want to thank you for joining me today and giving all this wonderful information to my guests. And like I said, even beyond the live show, I send the show out to anybody who asks me, you know, any of the questions that we hit on today. It's like, oh, you need to check out this show and this person.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Stay there for a second. And I also want to remind you that I'm giving free health coaching sessions. So please go to my website and get a hold of me. It's Balanced Life by Debbie, spelled DEBI.com. And I also have my webinar coming up. So look for that. That's July 18th, Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want you to keep going out and having those conversations that connect to a healthier you. Bye, everybody. And thank you, Jason. Thank you.